everybody, welcome to Cokesbury Online. Wherever you found us, we are so glad that you're tuning in with us. Hey, guess what? We're starting a new series this week. It's called Into the Wild. We have Stephen here with us, and he's going to be talking about how to navigate through the wilderness. And right now, that's kind of perfect, right? So I am so excited to hear from him, and I want to let you know something. We're in person. 10 a.m. North and South campuses. All you have to do is go online. You can do that through our app and reserve your spot. We would love to see you here in person, so make sure if you want to be here with us, get on the app, secure a place, and we would love to see you. But now, let's hear from the worship team. I'm excited to hear it. Rattle, let's go.
Disappointment is Sunday's empty tomb. Since when has impossible ever stopped you? This is the sound of dry bones rattling. This is the praise make a dead man walk again. Open the grave, I'm coming out. I'm gonna live again. This is the sound of dry bones rattling. Yeah. Pentecostal fire, stirring something new. You're not gonna run out of miracles anytime soon. Oh, resurrection power runs in my veins too, yeah. I believe there's another miracle here in Israel. This is the sound of dry bones rattling. This is the praise, make the dead man walk again. Open the grave, I'm coming out. I'm gonna live again. This is the sound of dry bones rattling, rattling. My God is able to save and deliver and heal and restore anything that He wants to. Just ask the man who was thrown on the bones of Elijah if there's anything that He can do. Just ask the stone that was thrown out the tomb in the garden. What happens when God starts to move? I feel Him moving it now. I feel Him doing it now. I feel Him doing it now. Do it now. Do it now. This is the sound of dry bones rattling. This is the praise, make a dead man walk again. Open the grave, I'm coming out. I'm gonna live again. Open the grave, I'm coming out. I'm gonna live again. Open the grave, I'm coming out. I'm gonna live again. This is the sound of dry bones rattling, rattling.
Hey, here at Cokesbury, we are a church of next steps. And one way that you can take your next step is by giving. And I can't say thank you enough for the overwhelming amount of people that have continued to give through these crazy, crazy times. You guys are showing up and you're showing out, and you're still making Jesus known in this community by Fig Tree and Manna House and all these other projects that we're doing. You guys are making that happen just by your generous hearts, and we are so thankful for that. There's 4 ways that you can give. You can give online at cokesbury.tv. You can text to give to the number at the bottom of the screen. You can mail it in, or you can give on the app. Once again, I just want to say thank you so much from every single person on staff here at Cokesbury. We are so grateful for your continuous gifts that you are just providing so much for, and we just thank you so much. We couldn't do any of this without you. So one more time, let's throw it over to the band. This is a song called Defender.
You go before I know that you've even gone to win my war. You come back with the head of my enemy. You come back and you call it my victory. You go before I know that you've even gone to win my war. Your love becomes my greatest defense. It leads me from the dry wilderness, and all I did was praise. All I did was worship. All I did was bow down. All I did was stay still. Find your truth. Your mercy is the shade I'm living in. You restored my faith and hope again. And hallelujah, you have saved me so much better your way. Introduced me to your love. You picked up all my pieces, put me back together. You are the defender of my heart. When I thought I lost me, you knew where I left. You reintroduced me to your love. You picked up all my pieces.
Hey everybody, welcome to Cokesbury Church. My name is Stephen, I'm the senior pastor here. I hope you've had a good weekend, and I hope you've been able to have a little bit of fun. I know that in the moment that you and I find ourselves, sometimes having just joy in life can seem so distant. So I hope that you've been able to do something fun. If this is your first time with us, I want to encourage you to jump into our live chat. It's a great place to meet people, and it's a great way for us to connect with each other. And so you can interact even during the message, and that'd be a great thing. So I hope that you guys will do that. We're starting a brand new series called Into the Wild, and over the next 4 weeks, we're going to be talking about how sometimes life can just feel really wild and almost out of control. And so I want to start here. Have you ever been on a wild car ride? I'm talking about one of those deals where you literally felt like, you know what, man, my life is flashing before my eyes. I had one of those in high school. I lived in Chattanooga, which is just south of Knoxville here, and I lived out in the suburbs. And one of the things that we liked to do back then was after a Friday night football game, once we all got back to the school, we'd put our equipment up and then we would load up into people's trucks and we would drive about 30 miles north of Chattanooga to a place called Mowbray Mountain, and that's where everybody went four-wheeling, right? Now, when I say four-wheeling, I'm talking to rednecks, right? Like, I'm a redneck at heart. I grew up in a community of Chattanooga called Red Bank, and then we moved to a place called Hickson, and so it's just a part of who I am. And so that was kind of a thing back in the 80s, and Mowbray Mountain had some trails, and you could eventually lead out to a big opening that came to the brow, and you could literally look out over the entire Chattanooga Valley. And so every Friday night, that's what we did. I had a friend named Charlie Brown, and I owe Charlie a lot. In fact, Charlie's one of the reasons that I'm a follower of Jesus today. But Charlie was not really the sharpest crayon in the box, right? But he had a four-wheel drive pickup. And so on this particular night, it was late. We piled up in his truck. We hit the trail, and I'm telling you, man, there were rocks. There were giant mud holes. It was lined with trees. It was absolutely pitch black. And Charlie was driving down the trail like he was at a NASCAR event in Talladega. And to this day, it really was one of the scariest rides I've ever had. I was fortunate enough to call shotgun, and so I was sitting in the cab, and we're bouncing around, and mud's flying everywhere. My head's bouncing off the roof of the truck. The people that were in the back were holding as tight as they could to the roll bar, and Charlie was just screaming down the trail. Our starting tailback was in the back, and he actually broke his tailbone when Charlie went over a bump, and it slammed him down on top of the wheel well. I mean, y'all, listen, it was scary, and it really was a wild ride. Now, if I'm honest, that's what the last several months has felt like. It's been a wild ride. You got to think that this has been something that one day our kids and our grandkids are going to talk about, right? Not only are we facing sort of the wildness of the economy, but we've got wildness in our own financial life, or maybe we've got some wildness in a work situation or some dynamics that we're having to deal with. We're also just all trying to hold on to our emotional health and our spiritual health and our financial health. Just trying to manage all of that has felt a little bit crazy, right? I mean, it's a wild ride right now. Well, I want to share some good news. It may sound a little bit oversimplified and maybe even a little bit trite, but I really do believe it. And it is this: that God won't leave you in the wilderness. He will lead you through the wilderness. God won't leave you and I in the wilderness. He will actually lead us through the wilderness. So over the next few weeks, we're going to be looking at how God meets his people in the wilderness and how he actually leads his people there. He forms them and he shapes them and he prepares them as we begin to make our way into our own promised land. Because that's exactly what he did for the Israelites. You can read about their story in the book of Exodus. The Israelites had spent hundreds of years in captivity in Egypt. And eventually God raises up a guy named Moses. And he sends him to lead the people out of captivity into a season of freedom. And so Moses goes to Pharaoh, the most powerful guy in Egypt, and he tells him that you got to let the people go. And of course, Pharaoh doesn't do that. And if you read the story, God sends all of these plagues to drive home the point, right? Trying to get Pharaoh's attention. So the land gets inundated with frogs, and then God sends locusts, and then boils pop up all over people's body, and it makes them just really miserable. And finally, Pharaoh caves in, and he lets the people go. But then he changes his mind. because this is his workforce. And so you've got this back and forth. But finally, he agrees to let the Israelites go. And so they begin to head out into the wilderness, and they're making their way to the promised land. And here's what we read in Exodus chapter 13, verse 17. When Pharaoh finally let the people go, God did not lead them along the main road that runs through Philistine territory, even though that was the shortest route to the promised land. God said if the people are faced with a battle, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led them, watch this, in a roundabout way through the wilderness toward the Red Sea. Thus the Israelites left Egypt like an army ready for battle. So here's kind of the first big idea. God often leads his people in a roundabout way. God rarely takes the shortest route. And especially when it comes to the wilderness seasons of our lives, it often feels like God takes us through the wilderness toward whatever it is that he has for us in our lives. Now here's the deal. I don't really like that. Let me ask you, is there any shot that you feel a little bit crazy right now? Think about it. Like, are we going this way, or are we going to go that way? Are we opening? Are we not opening? Are we going to school? Are we not going to school? Are we just sort of going to school? And then what about the holidays? Can we travel? Should I not travel? Can I have family? Should I not have family? Is it cool to go shopping, or should I do everything online? I mean, it's wild. And sometimes maybe we wonder, God, what in the world are you doing? Well, here's what I think we're going to see over the next couple of weeks, is that sometimes God needs to teach us and help us grow before we face certain battles in life. And so with the Israelites, it says God didn't lead them right into Philistine territory. Did you catch that? The Philistines would have been ready to fight. The Israelites were coming out of generations of captivity. They had no leadership. They had no strategy. They didn't even have an army. They were not ready to fight. And God knew they weren't prepared for that reality. So he took them the roundabout way to prepare them for what they would end up facing in the future. Now, I don't know about you, but that doesn't really fire me up. Check this out. When we come to faith, I think most of us, if we're honest, we think it should look just like this. We place our trust in God. We experience forgiveness, maybe we find a little bit of freedom, and we believe that there should be a straight line between our rescue and our reward, right? Like I should be blessed, life should be going well, my bank account should be growing, my family should be healthy and stable. There should be a direct correlation between my rescue and my reward. The problem is, it's not a straight line. In fact, I think for most of us, our spiritual journey looks more like this. This right here is the roundabout way, y'all. That's exactly what it looked like for the Israelites. They thought, man, we're out of here, right? Like, we're free. We're going to go straight to the promised land. Nope. 40 years of roaming in the desert was ahead of them. They just didn't know that. God took them the roundabout way. Now, here's what I see in this text about the roundabout way. If God leads you to it, he will see you through it. That's what I'm seeing. If God leads you to it, he will see you through it. See, you and I are not alone. The roundabout way is not a setback, it is a set up for something greater. The roundabout way isn't God out of control or maybe falling asleep at the wheel or improvising. No. It's actually God's plan and God's purpose for his people. And it is a plan and a purpose, listen to this, for his glory. So the question becomes, how do we keep it together when we find ourselves in the wilderness? How do we hold it together when everything feels like maybe it's out of control? A couple of thoughts for you. One is, trust God's wild leadership. A number of years ago, I came across a little book. It's called The Worst Case Scenario Survival Guide. And it's a fascinating book. They give you advice for how to handle all kinds of situations, but there's one in particular that I love, and that's how to survive an anaconda attack. It says this: if you're attacked by an anaconda, do not run. The snake is faster than you are. Number 2, lie flat on the ground, put your arms tight against your sides, your legs tight against one another. Number 3, tuck your chin in. You see where this is going, right? Number 4, the snake will come and begin to nudge and climb over your body. Do not panic. So you see, you're starting to feel like bait. Number 5, after the snake has examined you, it will begin to swallow you from the feet and always from the end. Permit the snake to swallow your feet and ankles. Do not panic. I would be freaking out. Number 6, the snake will now begin to suck your legs into its body. You must lie perfectly still. This will take a long time. Number 7, when the snake has reached your knees, slowly and with as little movement as possible, reach down, take your knife, and very gently slide it into the side of the snake's mouth, between the edge of its mouth and your leg, and then suddenly rip upwards, severing the snake's head. Number 8, be sure to have a knife. Listen, sometimes God's leadership in the wild can feel a lot like facing an anaconda. I mean, sometimes we don't understand exactly what's happening. We don't exactly know what the future holds. We don't know exactly what God is doing, and it can be really, really scary. And all of our instincts will tell us, this right here, this is the moment that I need to start panicking. But what our faith is telling us, and what the scriptures are telling us, and what God, I think, is telling us, is that now is not the time to panic. Now is the time to actually further trust in God's leadership. Check out how this plays out in Exodus 14, verse 1. Then the Lord gave these instructions to Moses. Order the Israelites to turn back and camp by the sea. Camp there along the shore. Then Pharaoh would think the Israelites are confused. They're trapped in the wilderness. And once again, I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will chase after you. I have planned this in order to display my glory through Pharaoh and his whole army. After this, the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So the Israelites camped there as they were told. Now, I want you to notice a couple of things. First, the Israelites were commanded to go back. So think about this, right? They're just headed out. And they're like, okay, we're going this way. Well, that's cool. This is going to be our new normal. We're actually heading toward the promised land. But then God says, no, I need you to go back. And they're like, what? Like, why are we doing this? Didn't we already walk this way? Aren't we now going back to Egypt? See, God is actually leading them, but they don't understand it. There is a purpose. Look at verse 3. Then Pharaoh will think the Israelites are confused and they're trapped in the wilderness. And the reason that God wants Pharaoh to be confused gets revealed in verse 4. He says, I have planned this in order to display my glory through Pharaoh and his whole army. After this, the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. See, God wanted Egypt to see his glory, and God wanted the people of Israel to see his glory. See, sometimes life in the wilderness reminds us that life is not about us. Life is about God, and life is about God's plan and God's purpose. And listen, even in the midst of a pandemic, God still has a purpose. He still has a plan. He is still working, and all of this will work out for his glory and be for our good. And so the question is, will we trust God's leadership even in this season when we may not understand it? Think about it. This requires a little bit of honesty right here. Don't most of us have a pretty good idea, if you could be honest with yourselves, of how your life should go? And then don't we, over time, begin to project that onto God, and we start to imagine the future that we'd like to have? And most of us, we want the fastest, most friction-free path to get there. But the truth is this: you and I don't know better than God. We don't know how our life needs to go. We cannot imagine a better future than God already has planned. None of us are smarter than God. And so when life gets crazy, it's important to remember who God is and what God is like. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. There are a ton of adjectives in Scripture that are used to describe God. It describes God as being all-knowing or all-powerful or all-present, or God is holy and God is eternal, God is unchanging and God is righteous. And all of those are really, really amazing. But there are also some nouns that I think are pretty important that really describe God. God is wisdom. God is truth. God is goodness. God is justice. God is the beginning and God is the end. God is light. God is your salvation. God is your Father and my Father. And best of all, God is love. So think about that. God cannot want something other than what is ultimately best for his people. His very nature is to give and to sacrifice and to rescue and to restore. I'm telling you, you can trust him even when you don't understand him. I feel like I might be speaking to somebody today. You don't have to have it all figured out. Your faith doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all the answers. Listen, God rescued you in the past. Your reward is on the way. The challenge is don't lose hope because it's been delayed. Don't break faith because it feels like maybe in this moment you might be taking a step or two backwards. If God is leading you, you don't have to panic and you don't have to worry. If God led you to it, he will see you through it. Here's another thought. Expect God to move in unexpected ways. When our kids were little, we used to read them a book called We're Going on a Bear Hunt. And I don't know if you're familiar with this book. It came out around 1989, 1990, somewhere in there. And so we were right at the tail end of telling our boys bedtime stories. And it's a great book. It starts out, we're going on a bear hunt. We're going to catch a big one. It's a beautiful day. We're not scared. And so the characters in the book, they head out on this journey. And they hit this series of obstacles along the way. And with each obstacle, there's the same refrain. We can't get over it. We can't go under it. Oh no, we have to go through it. And so as you make your way through the story, you see these characters. They run into some really tall grass and there's some mud. They come to a river they got to cross. They go through this snowstorm. Finally, they find themselves in a cave, and every time it's the same refrain. We can't go over it. We can't go under it. We have to go through it. And then finally, they get to the bear. And it says, one shiny wet nose, two big furry ears, two big googly eyes. It's a bear. And they all freak out and they run all the way back. They go through the cave, through the snowstorm, through the mud, through the tall grass, run back to their room, hide under the covers, and they say, we're never going on a bear hunt again. I absolutely love that book because there's a principle. And the principle is this, that sometimes the only way to get out of something is you got to go through it. See, when you're in the wilderness, it can feel reassuring or comforting to go back, but that's not actually the play. That's what the Israelites did. First, God led them out, and then they doubled back, and then he led them a little bit more, and finally they were camped at the Red Sea, and they're getting grumpy, and they're starting to complain, and they're starting to think about that time that they spent back in Egypt, and they start to convince themselves that maybe that wasn't such a bad time in their history. And eventually Pharaoh shows up, and just like God said, he sees that the Israelites look confused, and he thinks that's exactly where he wants them. And so literally the ground is shaking with all the chariots and all of the army coming straight at the Israelites. It looks like God led them straight into a trap. And listen, God will often lead you and I into an impossible situation to show us that he is the God of the impossible. And let's be honest, it may feel impossible for you right now. It may feel impossible at work. It may feel impossible at school. It may feel impossible when it comes to money or your health. It may feel impossible as you look to the future. You may be like me and thinking, well, you know what? 2020, even though it's finally coming to a close, it actually feels impossible. The Israelites felt like they were in an impossible situation, and this is what Moses tells the people in Exodus chapter 14. Don't be afraid. Just stand still and watch the Lord rescue today. The Egyptians you see today will never be seen again. The Lord will fight for you. Just stay calm. Just stay calm. See, the reason they didn't have to be afraid is because they had a God watching over them who was actually fighting for them. They had a God with a plan and a purpose. It was a God who knew exactly how their story was going to end. It was a God who had their best interest at heart, who had always kept his promise, who had always followed through, who had never one time forgotten or forsaken them. And if you know that story, you know that Moses turns around, he raises up his hands, the Red Sea parted, and the people walked across on dry land. Pharaoh and his army chased after them, and when the last Israelite reached the other side of the shore, the walls of water came crashing down. It erased the army, and it brought freedom to the people. And God did exactly what God said he would do, that they would never be remembered again. Listen, God is seldom in a hurry, but he's always right on time. Friends, you got to stay calm. You got to find a way to fight through the fear. You got to keep trusting even when it doesn't make sense. You got to believe that God is who God says he is, and deliverance is just around the corner. I know that life can feel a little bit wild right now, and I know for some of us it feels like it's completely out of control and things have just gone crazy and we're not sure that we're going to see the other side. I don't know what tomorrow's going to look like, but I know that God is with us in this moment. And if you and I can trust his wild leadership, and if we can expect him to move in unexpected ways, this season that you and I are in, it does not have to be a tragedy. It does not have to be something we look back on with regret, but God can actually move in such a way that people start to get free, that we can find a sense of hope, that some of us can have a renewed sense of what we're called to do on this planet, that the world can change, and that life can still be lived to its fullest. We've just got to stay calm, because God's got a plan, and God's got a purpose, and God's got a history with the people of Cokesbury Church. This isn't the first time we've gone through something tough, and it won't be the last time. But if we'll do what we've always done, if we'll stay faithful, if we'll lean in and not run away, if we'll fight through our fear, if we'll keep trusting that God is who God says he is, then a better day's gonna come. And y'all listen, when that better day comes, we're gonna party like we've never partied before. But between that day and this day, you and I have got work to do. I know that it feels like we're in the wilderness, but it's not all for nothing. I think God is teaching us, and God is shaping us and molding us, and God really is preparing us for what lies ahead. So keep the faith. Keep your chin up when you leave the house. Go about your daily life. Be responsible. Take care of other people, and look for how God is moving, because I promise you, it's in those movements that you and I will find out who we really are. And beyond that, we'll find the courage to believe who God really is. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. I hope to see you guys next week. Have a great week.
Here as we wait, seek your face. Come and make your throne upon our praise. Here in this place, have your way. The moment that we see you, we are changed. Show us your glory. Show us your glory. In wonder and surrender we fall down. Show us your change every